So this is the behind the scenes where you can. Oh, okay, now it's live. I was gonna say this is the behind the scenes where people are getting their makeup done and their hair done.
We had to wait a couple of seconds. We're good. Welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday night. I know it is a new start, new date, but we are here. It is the Esports DDU chat. I am James O'Hagan. I am hosting tonight. I am the Director of Digital and Virtual Learning for the Racine Unified School District and also host of the Academy of Esports podcast. And to my right over here is...
Hey everybody, good evening. I'm Bradford Harris at Ted Tinker on Twitter, and I am the Director of Learning for Sept, Texas Scholastic Esports Federation, and I'm also an Education Strategist for SHI.
And just down here we have...
Mike Dolly. I'm a business education teacher at Elkhorn Area High School here in Wisconsin. I'm also the president of the Wisconsin High School Esports Association. So thanks for having me.
Well, and now it's really important to note that because, again, we are working on our new format, new night, new way of doing things. Please make sure you jump into the chat. If you have questions, if you have comments, we want to react to your thoughts. We want to react and share your ideas. So please make sure you bring that into the chat tonight. It will help us make a much better and engaging show. The topic tonight is missteps in esports. It's basically like what those things you do that you go, this is such a great idea, and then all of a sudden it just crashes around you and you don't even know. Or again, you think you are absolutely doing the right thing. It's not necessarily a crash, but it could be the way you present the idea to other teachers, to other students, and who you're inviting in and how you're inviting them into your program. So that is the topic tonight. I know Mike and we are a part of the Wisconsin High School Esports Association, and boy, oh boy, we stepped in it. Well, I stepped in it more, I think, than Mike this week. I'll throw this out there as the first major misstep that I have made in a very long time with esports. We want to bring all different types of games to students, right? We want to make sure that we are meeting all of our demographics, that we are attracting kids who want to be a part of our programming. So we thought it would be a fantastic idea to do a couple of things. Number one, we wanted to run for a couple of years now an NBA 2K tournament. Great. We know that there's a lot of kids who play that game who aren't necessarily a part of our esports program. That's why we wanted to bring them in. And second of all, we wanted to try a whole new format of play. Rather than just doing the old round robin, everybody plays everybody, we wanted to do something that provided a little more competitive balance. And so the style that we decided to use was Swiss style. Mike, can you explain Swiss style to people who may not know?
So I think this is one of those initial things to where, like, understand the format of your tournament. A Swiss style format is essentially you play the first week, everybody is 0-0, and then you report your matches. And if you won, then the next week you will play a school that is 1-0, just like yourself. And so the idea behind it is you're constantly playing teams that are also on a winning streak or near the same win-loss record as you are. So that way it's supposed to help with the competitive equity or the competitiveness of the league itself. So that way you're not getting a lot of one-sided matches every single week. It is really nice. The biggest downsides to in the past when we've run it is that when teams get to like that 0-4 mark, they're really discouraged in participating anymore because they know they don't really have a shot to make playoffs or be a top standing team. And given my previous past, even before the Wisconsin group, it was one of the reasons why we stopped participating in some like bigger leagues is because those teams would just not show up anymore and not communicate. So it's got pros and cons.
And I know too that again we started with the best of intentions. We have our league rules set up. The one thing that we knew was going to probably be a headache coming into this was that the game NBA 2K, while a lot of games now are cross-platform play, an example being Fortnite, where you can play it on, say, a Switch, or you can play it on an Xbox or PlayStation or a PC or even your phone or a tablet against the same people. NBA 2K does not have that ability, even though they make it for PC and PlayStation and Xbox. You cannot cross-platform play. So immediately that created some of our issues right off the bat because we had to make sure that everybody had copies of the game on the PC. But the other part of this too, of course, was that the league style that we chose, the Swiss style, requires basically everybody to make sure that they are reporting scores, that they are showing up for matches, because especially when you've only got a couple of days in between matches, if those scores are not reported, if there is a no-show and you need to reschedule, it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to fix it on the fly. And so what we did last week was we did our first day, and I only got like 4 scores reported, which is very odd for our group, but we also had a lot of new people trying to get into this as well. And you know, we only get 4 scores, and you try to go from a Tuesday to a Thursday competition, it did not fly. So we put it on pause, and we said we're going to try to pick this up next week on Tuesday, try to get all the scores. And we still didn't get them. And unfortunately, we had to say, we're taking this back to the drawing board. We're going to have to rethink this. And here's the thing, too, about when you make these missteps. Again, I've been doing this for 6 years. Mike's been doing this for a while as well. Bradford, I know you've been watching how this all plays out from where you are. But it's been something where it's important, I think, for us to also acknowledge when we do fail in something like this. We can't just say, well, it's somebody else's fault. No, I take the blame for this one because, again, we were not as well prepared as we thought we were. Again, we were relying on our past performance with some of our other teams. But again, new title, new kids, some coaches who don't necessarily understand the format. I just did a really poor job of communicating the needs and necessities for what we would need to do this. And I know, and I've learned from it, and hopefully people are learning from their mistakes as well with esports.
This whole thing, like the biggest thing for me on the backside of it was learning some of like the small details of how NBA is working with the Epic Game Store and Steam. Mm-hmm. Like this is something that I didn't even think about when we were going through all of this, and this is one of those oversights that like you'll never understand unless you crash and burn through this whole process and learn from it. Is that like to be able to access even the cross play, like you have to link your Epic Games account to your Steam account so that Steam people can play with Epic people. I didn't realize that. Like I don't have that issue with like Rocket League or some of those other titles that are on there. And this is it's a thing for NBA. And as we were going through some of those initial like bumps and bruises that first day, I was on some of the forums and I was reading all these different things and like how people weren't able to play with certain people. Never would have thought about that in a million years to check that. And you know, I will take some responsibility as well that I didn't do my due diligence either, and now this is a whole learning process. So, and I think every title that we've done this with, it's always been a learning title, and I think that's where the shared resources comes in with a lot of this and researching who's already doing what. I don't know. There are other states that are running NBA 2K and they're doing it fine, and I didn't use my resources. I tried to reinvent the wheel.
But I think there's always something to be tweaked, because I'll be honest, for me, in my position as the director of learning part, I never got a chance to participate in any of the tournament parts, because when I would leave work, that's when tournaments start. So I'm driving home and TechSep has already started the bracket and all that kind of stuff. So I missed that part. And so I would feel really bad about it. But then when it's like the special events, like I forget what event we had, and Danielle needed all hands on deck. I'm like, well, great. This is my chance to really see how this is all set up. And we at TechSep, we admit our failures too. And I think it was a Fortnite and it was a Texas Showdown tournament with some other tournaments. And I was in charge of Fortnite. And I know Angelique is on here, because I reached out to Angelique. I said, Angelique, I need some help because I don't know what I'm doing. I need to know how these kids can jump in and do this. And so she walked me through a whole bunch of stuff. She even gave me an outline. I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant. It's all that back end stuff that people don't know. And even kids, they weren't like cussing me out or anything, but they're like, kids will say on Discord, I'm done because like you don't have your stuff together. And like, dang it, I feel really bad because like you want to be on it. But then we had a debrief, and we were like, look, as an organization, we see our faults. We get it. But like, we have somebody that's doing the Smash side of it that needs a totally different bracket. Fortnite, we were admitting like, what bracket are we doing? Don't even know what we should do depending on the type of gameplay we're doing. And then I think they were doing Rocket League, which is another bracket. And I said, well, even as an organization, we probably need to have someone who's not necessarily an expert in each game, but just you're the specialist in that field to where you get the knowledge of it, and then you're practicing looking at it, and then we discuss and we debrief, or we get our managers, our coaches who are in the organization to help us out a little bit more. It was a huge learning curve. And then one of the things that our IT person, Avon, said, he was like, look, even before we start anything, we probably need to do a show. Like, just get on and just, where are those bumps and bruises? So even if it's just us, let's act like we're running a tournament. Where do we see the slip-ups? Maybe we get some managers and say, hey, can you just act like you're a student to see where our slip-ups are before we start? I said, Avon, that is an excellent idea. So every time we have a tournament, we go back and debrief and go, what worked? What didn't work? Why didn't the students hop on? We even got to the point where we're not even using Discord to get the kids to put on, because what we were realizing there is that's like wrangling cattle with the managers and the students, getting them all on. So we use another platform to make sure that they're on, but it's not TechStep really doing it. It's the coaches that are getting them on. But it's a huge learning curve that I never even knew existed. I mean, I knew it was there. Avon would talk about it, and all our board members would talk about it, but I wasn't in that mix. But I was like, I gotta be in that mix to understand it. But every event, there's always something that we need to learn and figure out. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Mike and James. There's always a learning curve with this.
And I like that Chris writes in here, I'm a big fan of debriefing events. Adopt, implement, upgrade, repeat steps 2 and 3. Again, and here's the thing, Mike and Bradford. The thing that we started doing with the association for our other games was, hey, we have to have a preseason so we can work through all of these technical issues. Because especially when you're bringing on a new school or a new school district, they think, okay, all we have to do is show up, plug in our switch or whatever to the school network, and everything will be cool. As much as you tell them, talk to your IT department, make sure your IT department is signed off on this, make sure it all works. We didn't even think about that. Like, we didn't even run a preseason that of even like 1 or 2 matches so that we could just make sure, hey, is all of this working? Because even if we had done that, we probably would have been able to make this work. It's so disappointing, because here's the other thing, the other caveat or misstep that a lot of people make, and I know you guys can speak to this. When you see how excited kids are about a game title or bringing in new things into esports, into your program, you almost need to make sure that you also temper the expectations, and you also need to make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew. Running a tournament like this, even if it was a pilot, it was a 4-week pilot, running it at the start of the school year was crazy. And I say crazy not in a mental health sense, but I say it in the sense of, it was crazy to say, could we pull this off right at the start of school? Everybody's coming back from being off COVID. Everybody is, they've got trying to get their classes started. And here's the thing too, we're teachers. We should be resilient, because you've had I know every teacher who's watching this right now has had that lesson. Like, you're in the first 10, 15 minutes or halfway through the lesson, you go, boy, this is a dumpster fire happening right here. And you just go, you know what, kids? This lesson's not working. We're going to have to do something else. And either you throw out the lessons for the day, or you come back and try it again the next day in a different way. Sure, it throws off your pace or whatever that you think, so you can get to the end of the book or whatever your curriculum says you have to do. We as educators, we should be thinking that way already. And for whatever reason this time, I think because all of our bandwidth is so stretched right now, it was just something that, God, if I could come back and do it again, which we will, it's going to be a heck of a lot better, because I think we're going to learn from these mistakes. Now, it isn't just a technical mistake or even some of these. There's also experiences that people have with, again, leagues or groups that promise you, hey, everything's going to be great. You just sign up. We're just going to get into this. But there's a lot of missteps that can be made there, right? Who wants to start that one?
There's a lot to unpack on that one.
Sure. But again, we want to keep it professional. We're not doing this to call out specific groups or associations. What we're doing here is, again, we're trying to provide a sense of perspective and ideas, because we've gone down, some of us have gone down these roads before. And again, as much as you have your radar on, it's very easy for, again, your blinders to come up as well and just go, yes, this is going to work. Yes, this is going to work, until it doesn't.
So, and I guess I'll speak to this more so from the president of the state association. I do get a lot of invitations for combines and stuff like that. And a lot of the DMs that I get on Twitter are like, hey, we're putting on this tournament, or we're running this combine. Get your students to sign up. Mm-hmm. And they're like, and we'll help them get access to college scholarships. And my question that I usually ask, that I've learned from sitting with this group and listening in chat quite a bit during these weekly conversations, is, what are you doing with our students' information? Like, how many colleges are you going to expose them to? Because I'm sorry, if they're predominantly West Coast colleges, there's not very many of our kids that are willing to relocate all the way out west for potentially a 2-year college or something along those lines. And, I teach a lot of career exploration and college exploration. So it's like, now they're looking to pay out-of-state tuition as well for this scholarship. That's not going to offset anything for them. So coming at it from, what are you doing with the data? Who's having access to that data? Mm-hmm. How many colleges will have direct connections with our students? And, before I even start talking about format, dates, and times, and all that other kind of stuff, there's some of these preliminary questions that need to be answered. And they're like, oh, well, the tournament's Saturday. I'm like, you just sent this to me on Thursday. I don't have time to vet through all of this too. Like, you're talking about mobilizing kids who have work, who are also in other sports and band and musicals and homecoming seasons right now here in the state. So it's like, I don't have time to send this out. I'm sorry.
Well, that's because the people that probably are reaching out to you are in that pro circuit, and they're not understanding the EDU circuit. And we're having to tell them, okay, stop. We got testing next week. We got this going on. You're giving this information to me on Thursday, and now I got to push this out on Saturday, and the only thing I can do is probably tweet it out, and hopefully people will come. And then on top of that, you're only really catering most likely to the player that's going to come to the tournament. Like, what about, the people who want to shoutcast? What about the people who want to do the production side of it? We were just talking in the background with Sam about how she's laying all of this out. There's scholarships for that. What is there an activity for someone in that? But that's not what some of them are looking for. I know for me, as I'm talking to some of these organizations, I'm saying, okay, you just slow down. I get what you're trying to do, but there's school is still happening over here. And I'm not just esports. I'm digital learning. I'm this. This is an after school program. And while I can run around and rally and get 6 or 7 kids, 6 or 7 kids is going to take me a full day for me to get, because I got other stuff I need to do. And I'm looking at James because he has a whole entire program, and you might as well. But y'all have a whole entire other programs that you are having to take care of. And so those are the things that we're having to educate these pro people on. I'm like, wait, you're trying to get into the EDU field. That's what they're saying. Well, I'm just trying to get into the EDU part. Okay, so if you want to get into the EDU part, this is what you're going to have to do. Number one, you're going to probably have to make this free. Number two, you're going to have to start looking at calendars. Number three, you can't tell us like 3 days before that you're doing a tournament, because only like this many people are going to come. And then we're going to have to talk to parents and students on, well, why I couldn't come, so I missed out on that great scholarship. So,
look, I don't want to say things have to be free. Look, we pay for all kinds of stuff in school, right? But here's the thing: if the experience is quality, if the experience is real, if it is well run, if it's well, established, I'm willing to pay for it. I just haven't seen something yet, an experience or anything yet that really says to me, yes, I will throw down $3,000, $10,000 a year to be a part of this, because again, the missteps, it's not just you running something and being able to check all your boxes and make sure everything works. You have to rely on the people on the other end, because again, this is competition. This would be like, let's say we had a soccer match. I'll use soccer as an example here, so because Mike's here, we'll call it football. So we have a football match, and one school has really nice uniforms. They take their bus, they take it to the field, and the other team just doesn't show up because they don't have a bus, or they didn't have a uniform or anything like that. And you go, well, what is this experience? Again, we have to rely on everybody in this ecosystem to be on their game as well too, because I hate when we have to do forfeits. And forfeits happen for all different reasons. It could be, a kid has to work, or a kid has another commitment, or the coach gets sick, or the school network goes down. Those things I understand. But there's also these groups and people who come into this, again, with the best of intentions. They think they have checked every box, and then they just don't know what they don't know until until it hits them in the face. And that's, I don't want to say I'll say it's okay, but I don't mean it's okay like, oh, just brush it off and yes, brush it off as best as you can. But as Chris was saying in the chat, do that debrief, find out why it didn't work, and go back and fix it. That's why it's so important. You can't just do these esports things. You can't do them in a vacuum by yourself, because just like with anything else in a school or school district, you have to have the acknowledgement and support of everybody in that, at least your IT, administration, school board. The last thing a school board ever wants to have, or a superintendent, they don't want to be the last to know, right? They get a little cheeky when all of a sudden they find out, oh, we just won a state championship in this game. We didn't even know this was going on. Tell us about this. And some people are fine with that, and some are not at all fine with that.
So, right now, just to even put this into perspective, I'm working on trying to get a field trip approved kind of last minute. And I'm saying I've known about it for 2 weeks, so I have a month notice. And so to be able to get approved for this, not only do I need to be able to put in and put together a presentation, I had to submit a proposal to be able to get onto the school board in 2 weeks. Then I'm going to have to stay after school on Monday, give a presentation to the school board because it's an out-of-state tournament in Illinois. Even though my school's 10 minutes from the border, I still need to get that approved. And then so I have to get the board approval on that with students there presenting with me. But then I'm going to have to then rent a vehicle as well. That's got to be sponsored by the school, since we don't have we don't have vehicles to take anymore. So I'm going to have to go to Enterprise as well. And that's, they're not open on the weekend. So I'm going to have to pick it up Friday night and drive that around all weekend and be to my school by like 5:30 in the morning, because there's like a coach's clinic at 8 a.m. and this tournament's 3 hours away. So I'm going to have to be up at like 4 a.m. on a Saturday to go get my kids, hope my kids show up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Otherwise, we're not making it on time. Mm-hmm. But that's just, again, that's for a small little weekend tournament that's in person. And now if you're talking these platforms with student data that we're also having to comb through the privacy policies for these organizations. I have schools that are now reading through the Discord policies as to whether or not that they'll approve that use at school, even for the teacher. There's a couple of schools and they have state data team members that are going through those. Even the battle.net launcher, they're going through the privacy policy on those because they need to be transparent with their board about what they're installing on the school computers. So
wow,
it sounds really easy to say, we want to install Minecraft and we want to run this. But my high school won't do Minecraft because of previous experience where somebody installed a bad Packard or whatever that had a virus attached to it, took down our whole school network for a week. So
are they associating Minecraft EDU with Minecraft?
They see Minecraft now. Gotcha. And so yes, I know there's the differentiation between the two, but again, then that's educating on my part to show them that there's a big difference between what we're talking about. But because there was a bad incident before, many have the mentality of, we're not going back down that route. Like we tried it once, we burned, and we're not willing to try again.
There is a comment in chat. Sam, I don't know if you could bring up Fiona's comment that she just made about parents as scout. There we go. Just like parent volunteers as scout leaders, these clubs are a potential space for IT savvy parents to have a role as leaders and a summer to prepare. Here's what I will say about that. Yes, but there is always a caveat with this. Think about, okay, Bradford, I'll put you on the spot. You're an educator and a parent.
Okay.
Did you ever look at a teacher and go, oh my God, why are they teaching that way? Or, oh my God, why are they doing this? Or, oh my God, I would never teach this way ever in a million years.
Wow. Yes. But I will say too that the educator, that's another topic. But
well, but it's important to the it's important to the point, because my experience working in a school district and having, when I came into the job, they had a parent who, again, IT savvy, right? Mm-hmm. But did not understand privacy, data privacy. They didn't see that. They knew boxes and wires and how to make servers work, which is fantastic. I'm not saying that.
Yes. Yeah.
But it has to be a partnership. It has to be, because again, the education world, as much as private sector does with IT and everything else, the education world does have a lot more firewalls, a lot more hoops to jump through, a lot more things we have to have in place. It's always nice to have that support, and that person can go to bat with you to some of those meetings, who can sniff out when they think that there is a solution. But they also have to understand that our systems are designed completely differently than, say, what they do in their offices with, their whatever server they're running
or whatever. I will say this, and I was about to ask this question, but I'll slowly ask it at the end. I knew what was coming, and I'm not saying this in a bad way. I knew what was coming the year before. I was thinking about, implementing esports fully before I left to go to SHI. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, you know where I'm going with this, James, and Mike, you probably do too. Like, if I'm going to start something, it's almost like band. I got to start something in like July. No, I got to start planning in spring semester,
April, March
for the fall.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, oh my God, this is what my band directors were talking about. How hellish this is. Like, this is a year-round thing. And I started thinking, well, I got to get these teachers in to learn what esports is and plan this out before they go to their regular professional development stuff, because I got to get their heads cleared and thinking how to lay this out before they sit there and talk about, social emotional learning, math curriculum, all that stuff. I got to get them in the game. Mm-hmm. And so I was exhausted just planning that, and then talking with IT, and then doing this, and then doing that. But that was me by myself getting all of that together. And I'm thinking, I'll just go out and say it, because I had a friend that called me and I said, you know what? You're going to end up having to do this by yourself. And at some point now, there's got to be some type of director who solely is going to do this by themselves, and not be like James, where he's also doing director of learning this and this and this, because I just realized that I couldn't do it all if I wanted to see this succeed the way at the end of July I had it succeed. And I was like, okay, this is easier said than done. Me laying out that professional development, now the next step is, okay, how do I get the teachers learning about the bracket system? How do I get them learning about leagues? That's a lot. And this isn't a daily, this isn't a class. This is just an after-school program that's maybe 90 minutes for 2 or 3 days out of the week, and teachers who just love and dedicate it. So James, you are right. It is easier said than done to get even parents to recruit this, because then I'm also thinking I gotta think about getting teacher Mike Dolly a stipend, if he wants to even do it, because sometimes the love and kindness of your heart to do this for children, that's great. But at the end of the day, like, he probably wants to get paid to do this as well, because he's tired after teaching math all day long. So I got to entice him with some money. So, and that's just facts.
I like money.
I like
everybody.
money.
Everybody likes money. So I didn't realize till I finished that whole planning process that I gotta get, like you said, Jess, I gotta get a lot of people on board. But it's just me, pulling people. I gotta pull IT. I gotta pull. Since I don't sign the check, I gotta pull a director in to say, yes, Bradford, do this. I gotta pull teachers in to talk about this is what your schedule is gonna look like. I gotta do all these things on top of doing other digital learning stuff. It was a lot. Again,
that to going back to Fiona's point about the IT savvy, that's where you have value again, because you can have somebody who can have that advocacy of a conversation with somebody else. They speak the same language, right? But just like how we as educators have pride in the work that we do as educators, because we are professionals, we don't necessarily know everything about esports when we come into it, right? We hope that we do. Again, it's a flip of the roles. The kids know the games better than we do. They sometimes know how things work better than we do. But again, you're coming into somebody else's house. Again, and let's just take an IT director who has been building a system for many, many years, has developed that system to work in the ecosystem that it is in, and then you say all of a sudden, hey, I want you to do this thing. And then you pull in a parent who's IT savvy who then starts spitting, TCP IP and starts spitting, all the lingo and saying he could make this firewall change. Again, there has to be a dance. Unfortunately, there's got to be like that negotiation that takes place. You can't just come in guns blazing and go, we're going to do all this, unless the person's completely inept. But most tech directors, like I said, nowadays, it used to be that they, when I was a tech director, there was many times I found somebody who was just the librarian, I don't want to say just the librarian, was the librarian, and then they said, on top of this, you're now going to be our tech director for the whole school district. So make all the internet, because the internet comes into your library. That was literally some of the reasons why people became IT directors back in the late 80s and early 90s. So it's again, we have to be able to do this dance. It's going to help with avoiding missteps by having, again, these conversations early and growing your cohort and growing that those people you can call on and say, I need help with this. But again, it's got to be, the dance has to happen. You have to be able to negotiate the realities of what their job is and what you're trying to do, because ultimately, if the IT director is of the right mindset, they will want to do this too. You just have to make sure that when you come in, you're not putting them into a defensive position automatically by saying, well, you need to do this, this, and this, and telling them how to do their jobs. Again,
and to not, like, they are super busy people as well. So sometimes a small ask is all that you should start with. And I think that's another one that is there that needs to be addressed too, is don't go and ask for 7 different titles right off the bat. Like, it's okay to start with one, start small, build the trust and communication and that understanding, and then you can continue to keep growing your program. And that's because, again, like Bradford, you were saying, like, if you have to set somebody up now in order to take, say, your position, and you're the one that's running 8, 9 titles of kids around, and like, you have it all organized, but now if all of a sudden that you leave, you're that key component, that now somebody's got to step up into your role. And that's something that I've been seeing too, this like off season, I'm going to call it, is that I have athletic directors that are saying, like, hey, we don't have an advisor anymore. That teacher left. And they're like, I'm trying to step into the role. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so in my emails, I'm like, try not to do too much then, because you're already an athletic director. Like, oh my God, like, now this is a whole other athletic director position, like trying to manage all of your kids this way too, in something that you know nothing about. So it's like, it's okay to maybe step back a little bit and say, like, hey guys, like, I'm sorry, like, I can only run one title, like one varsity team for each. I'm sorry, like, we're gonna have to find a way in order to try to rotate people in or find additional ways to help you participate. Like, it's a lot to take on, and the IT side of it, the director side of it, the organization side of it. There's a lot that's there too.
Well, now, especially with what's going on this year, or now with virtual learning happening. Not putting anything on you, James. You did an excellent job, but like no, I'm just saying.
I love meeting my students. I will say that getting 500 plus new students and meeting every single one of them, I am just. These kids are amazing. I love that these kids are doing this. So sorry, go on.
No, I was saying, like, I know this is a brand new world for IT, and so what I did, and I'll just say it, being in, like James, we're in that same role. We were in that same role. I'm different. I kept IT secret. Nobody knew that I was working with IT, and I kept it like that. So, Mike, I'm gonna tell you why I did it. Mike never knew that if he was a teacher, I never talked about what I was working with IT. And the reason why I did that, because I knew that IT had 50,000 projects that they had to do. Mm-hmm. And I said, so I would tell teacher Mike, if you had a technical issue, you talk to me. If there's an issue with your computer or whatever, talk to me. You didn't know to go talk to James or somebody else, because the minute I opened up that can of worms, then they would all go running to network or whatever. And I let IT know that they're never coming to talk to you. They don't know that you exist. They don't know to talk to James at IT and networking, because this is all new. Esports is new. We're doing this delicately. We're going to start with Rocket League, or we're going to start with Overwatch. Here is the latest update. Let's try it. Let's look at Twitch or whatever it is that we're going to do. How does this work? We're only going to try it with 60 kids instead of 600. Let's do it real slow, because there was other issues that I know that network and IT had to handle. And they're like, oh my God, Bradford, we appreciate that. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But that was an advantage that I had because I work with them. I was in the same department with them. A lot of people don't have that, but you like you were saying, Mike, you got to go in and just, go slow with them. Hey, we want to do X. I'm not asking for a lot, but can we do this possibility? Maybe one game a semester, or maybe this one game for this 9 weeks, whatever is doable.
Well, I think the other thing we got to bring up, and I think Sam is really making sure that we bring up Fiona's point, parent volunteers rally to handle the fun. I start bringing it up and then she takes it off the screen. Parent volunteers rally to handle the fundraising for all other things they run. Honestly, the framework for all that has been there. It's what it's been for decades. Here's where I think, Mike, you started to allude to this in the chat as well, too, about how robotics is run. Absolutely important. A way to avoid a lot of missteps is by activating your parents, because again, when you get parent support, when you get, I had 5 esports teams and their parents at a board meeting. Board members saw that. So when it comes time for me to say I need X, Y, or Z, the board members have seen it. The superintendents have seen it. One of the things we're formalizing this year is an esports booster. Or call it an esports PTA, because after having now 3+ years of having esports teams, we have parents who absolutely love the opportunity that their kids have been given. It is the time to start leveraging. I'm not saying use, I say leverage. Use that inertia that a lot of these parents have, the love that they have for what how you've been helping their kids along, and it becomes, again, this way when, Bradford, you were saying, I got to get Mike a stipend. Once they see that there's all these parents who are in support of this, guess what? Those are voters. Those are people, when you put up for referendum, they're going to say, well, what have you done for my children? And again, 100, as we found in Racine, $1 billion referendum passed by 4 votes. Were those 4 votes coming from? I'll say it was esports parents who got us over the hump. I'll just throw that out there and make that claim, because I'll just say it was esports that got us over the hump. But Fiona's absolutely right. The thing that can help you avoid a lot of missteps, and is a misstep that a lot of people are still making to this day, they haven't engaged their parents. That is a huge one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can I drop the mic and walk? It's hanging. Okay.
Just hit it. Yeah, you have to get the parents involved day one. You have to before you start anything.
I think for us, like at my school, we had a mother whose son was dominant at Rocket League, and she was the biggest advocate. She was the one that was going to the papers. She was the one going to the school board meetings. She was the one tagging all of her friends on social media to say, like, look at what my kid's doing. Look at what my kid's doing. And I think that's really changing the mentality in our town. Just having that advocate of a parent to say, like, I'm proud of what my kid is doing. Like, look at what he's done because of video games. Right. And so, like, yeah, activating those parents can be just vital, even just to change stigma in the community that's around what we're doing. So,
well, and then because those parents, again, you are one voice, 100 voices, or that one parent who is going to make all that noise with the paper, during the day when you are teaching your class or being the admin for a virtual program or, working for SHI. Those parents are going to be the ones who are going to carry the message forward. They're going to be the ones who are going to help to, I don't want to say pressure, but show the value. The thing that I love too, and this is another thing that you can avoid early on and help grow your program. Don't just, again, build it in a bubble. Don't just include your parents in it. Start talking to your local city council people. Start talking to your state reps. When Mike and I formed we didn't form it. When we had our formation meeting of the Wisconsin Association, we had it in Madison. And Peter Barca, who at the time was one of our state senators in Kenosha, came to the meeting. He wanted to see what we invited him. He came to the meeting. He saw what. Now Peter Barca is like the head treasurer for the state of Wisconsin. His person who works for him, John Dickert, who used to be the mayor of Racine, is always hitting me up about wanting to know more and more and more about this esports stuff. So and now we've got, again, we had the pending legislation to try to get grants for school programs and community programs to start their own. It's amazing how people think like government is this big mysterious entity, right? And it's inefficient and whatever. Nothing more that politicians love than to get their picture taken, especially in an election year, with a bunch of kids doing something that is a hot topic right now. They look like they're in the know.
I will tell you, since I've been in this new space, the calls that I have been privy to, there have been community leaders, government leaders that are chomping at the bit, not just educators. They're like, what is this? I got money to spend. I want to know how we can outfit a community center, a program. I need to know about how I can make this inclusive. What can I do? And that blew my mind because, of course, I was in my teacher bubble. What would I didn't know. I mean, James, Mike, y'all would tell me this. They were like, okay, yeah, well, I got to go deal with this. But after being in so many calls and Katrina would tell me, like, yeah, this is where it is. I'm just like, oh my God, I had no idea that this is where it's at right now. People are talking about this, and it's not principals, it's not superintendents. We're talking, like you said, James, mayors, other community leaders that say, hey, I got this money. Mm-hmm. And the amazing thing that they're saying is, I know I can buy equipment. I got that, but I want to do more. What else can I do to make sure that these kids are more involved? What is esports? How can I develop a program? How can I promote pathways? I'm just like, oh my God, this is like what I've wanted to do since I started this journey, and now it's here. So yeah, so reach out to your community leaders as well, because they're looking for things like this.
But here's another misstep.
Okay.
Curriculum. I have an esports curriculum. I have an esports curriculum. I have an esports curriculum. This one has CTE. This one will help with SEL. Look. You're an educator. You are a professional educator, and somebody comes at you with, I have a curriculum. You should be immediately asking questions about who created it, what standards are you writing it to, who are you writing it for. If it's a CTE, One, say, well, wait a second. If it's CTE focused, that's only 50% of my students roughly who are going to be interested in CTE. What are we doing for the other 50%? It is, again, we are so happy when somebody notices what we are doing. We are so happy when somebody says, hey, esports for your school. Don't you want to do this? Yes, I really want to do this. That's a natural, normal response. But somebody can come at you with all the pomp, circumstance, silver bullets. We're going to pay for all this. We're going to do it free. Don't worry about it. You still, the misstep that a lot of people make is not asking questions. They see the flash, they see the flare, and they don't turn back the curtain and take a look inside and find out what's really underneath, because those things can absolutely come back to haunt you, just like working with certain groups or associations. A lot of people don't check their board. Like, how do you not? It's something that we don't think about, because, again, when somebody comes to us in education, let's take one of the big companies. Let's take Pearson, for example. You don't necessarily have to go check into the Pearson board because they've been doing business in education for a long time. I don't know. It's been ever since I've been an educator. They're vetted. They have had a lot of school districts are using their stuff. These companies that are springing up right now, I mean, are literally a website sometimes in one person. And saying, I'm going to do all of your SEL curriculum. Well, I see that you are an IT person. Where's your experience, or where are you getting this curriculum? Where did you get these ideas from? That's why when I look, for example, when people come around to me and say, well, where should I look for some esports curriculum? One of the people I point to is NASEF, because, again, they've got educators who have actually built a lot of these experiences. Again, we're talking about educated professionals, a lot of them with master's degrees who have built these things. Curriculum isn't just about what you do. It's what are you trying to do? What are you trying to teach? What points are you trying to get across? It isn't just about, hey, we're going to teach your kids how to do IT stuff. Well, how are they going to apply it? How are they going to then turn around and use it? Where is the educational value in all this? Because, again, a lot of these things are very nuanced, and a lot of things are missed. And, again, they come at it with a perspective of, well, I learned it this way. But that doesn't necessarily speak to the learner that's in the room. So that's where, again, there has to be this dance that takes place, questions asked.
You got to make the program sustainable now. The program has to be sustainable. And I've always said, I told my boss, I said, if I quit, why'd you put your head over your head? See, I hate when he does that.
All right. Just Sam, throw up Fiona's last comment there, please. That one I love. Current space is like Grinder for grifters. And you know what? It is. And that's why an easy misstep is not doing your background checks. Company calls you up and says, we want you to speak at a conference, right? If it's not like an Intel or a CDW, or if it's not a, name me another company, Dell, okay? Best Buy. If it's not one of those companies, if it's a company you've never heard of, or even if it's a company you've maybe heard of or but they're asking you to then come on their stage under their brand, under their name, and speak your ideas, you better know who you are representing. Because when you look at some of these boards, again, we've talked about it many times on this podcast, on this show. There's a lot of weed money that's out there. There's a lot of liquor money. There's a lot of gambling money out there now. And a lot of these companies are trying to diversify their weed and their gambling and their booze money through esports programming that goes right to kids. And if you're going to speak on their behalf, guess what? You're speaking for what they're fronting on the other end too.
It's just the predatory nature of everybody trying to get their piece of the pie. It's the same thing like those companies that are offering, affiliate programs to sell some sugary alternative drink to their friends. And it's like an MLM for most of them. Like, get 10 other people to sign up for your affiliate and you'll get this bonus level. And it's like, it's just predatory in nature. And so, we have to do the same thing that we're telling our students not to do. Like, we can't be making those same, not the do as I say, not as I do type of thing. Like, we need to do our due diligence too, and to weed through some of these people that are out there. And I mean, some of the ones that I've talked to, man, the price point that some of these companies come up with, I'm like, where'd you come up with this number? Mm-hmm. Like, I have some that are like $20 a user head, and then I got others that are like $4,000 for a site. And I'm like, I may be lucky to get one section. So you're talking 20 kids for $40,000. Like, there's no way that's going to sell. So I don't know where they do their market research or their analysis of the product value that they're bringing.
That's where we as educators, that's why I said it one day. I'm like, I think the new educators who are trying to get the degrees, they need to take some business and marketing classes. Those should be required because now
Mike's already ahead. He teaches it.
You teach it, but it should be a part of your license as an educator. It should be required before you walk in, because what I notice now that I've been in this space is that we have leaders that are just going to vendors, or whoever, and they see the glitz and the glamour, and they see that, it costs only $500. Okay, you need to, like you said, James, do your research. Is this going to work? Do we already have this product? Is it going to take our student data? When are we going to get PD? And what I've heard, what I've seen is that, we need to buy this extra component. We need to buy this extra component. Oh no, we don't have this. It's horrible. It's horrible.
We've only got about 9 minutes left. But what I do want to say too, and add into that mix, because Mike started to bring it up. And again, this is another classic misstep that a lot of people make when they start their esports programs. The esports program doesn't just have to be on a computer. Now, when I say that, I don't mean you're going to still do esports but do it through board games. What I mean is building in the health and wellness components into this, the exercise, the movement, the talking about diet, the talking about all these things that a lot of people, when they start, they again focus on the computers and the games. Don't make that mistake. You have to, just like with any other program, really, we need to look at this from a holistic. And again, this is about performance. This is about developing student performance, helping them to grow. And guess what? The way they're only going to get better is by, again, eating right, sleeping right, getting their good. And a lot of kids already struggle with that. Sometimes their home life is already crappy enough and they're not getting a good night's sleep. They're not getting breakfast or dinner or whatever. But we still need to talk about these things with our students. It is so vitally important that we have that conversation, because a lot of times they're not having that conversation at home. And again, the intrinsic value of this may spark, even if it's just getting them to stop drinking all those caffeinated drinks and start drinking more water, that's a win. Or, hey, when you go to lunch the next day, you've got a match that afternoon, don't load up on that burrito. Don't go out to lunch at McDonald's and eat up all that fat and stuff, because it's just going to slow your brain down. Plan out your meal, for at least get your lunch. Hit that salad bar. Almost every school now has a salad bar or some kind of a lighter choice when it comes to school meals, at least at the high school level. I know elementary and middle is a little different, but it's that opening to a conversation that a lot of people either don't know to take that step or don't want to enter that conversation for some reason, and I don't know why. But it's one that we should be. A misstep is make sure you don't avoid having those conversations about what goes on offline as well as online.
So, I'll speak real quick, but a program that I'm looking to launch that I was approached with, kind of voluntold that I'm running, was that during my lunch, I'm now going to be hosting a freshman group who have been identified by the counselors. They're having a hard time making friends this year because COVID it changed a lot of just the way that they're connecting and whatnot. So my room is going to be a dedicated video game, board game, lunch activity room. To where now those students are coming to me and we're going to be eating lunch together, playing board games and video games, just as a way to connect and make personal connections to the school as well. Because again, it's one of our school initiatives to try to get 100% student involvement in extracurriculars. And so we're using gaming as a way to ensure that they're building some of those relationships, not just with staff members too, but with peers too. So it's one thing that we're trying to utilize a little bit more as well.
That's cool.
Oh my gosh, and we're almost out of time, but Mike, you almost hit on another misstep. Ready for it? Let's take the gaming club and make it the esports club. What you're talking about, there may be some kids who, yes, are going to make those connections, right? They're going to make those connections to other kids, but they don't necessarily want a competitive experience. They want to just be able to come in and play what they want to and just socialize and have that time with their family or their friends. That classic mistake was made has been made many times over, and it doesn't. You got to honor both the non-competitive and the competitive spirit, because again, for kids, play is play. How they're choosing to play is important. Don't pigeonhole just because again it's gaming. Don't pigeonhole it into esports. Already in education, we're throwing the term around esports liberally, and I mean very like communism liberally, or pick San Francisco liberally. That's where I'm from. It is becoming an overused and an misunderstood term completely, which again harms the work that we're trying to do, because again, people think they know what it means, and it's not what it means. So. We do only have about 3 minutes left, so I guess we can go around for a final thought on this topic of missteps. Is there anything that we missed in our misstep conversation?
Oh, I'm sure there's hundreds of other missteps that we could talk about. I can easily say about 100 things that I've crashed and burned down in this whole process.
Is that your final thought?
Oh, sorry. I was just commenting about the comment. I mean, I think it's the same thing that we always try to do in the classroom, right? Like, I admit when I'm wrong. Like, I'm the first one to always admit when I'm wrong, but I usually tell the kids, like, I'm going to try to do better. Like, I'm sorry that this crashed and burned. Like, I'm going to just audible here at the line and try to do something that works, and hopefully we get something out of it. And this esports has been no different throughout this entire process. And I can't stress that debriefing meeting enough. Mm-hmm. Every year, every season, I always invite students and coaches to come in and tell me, what do you think went well? What needs improvement? Like, how do you think that we should change this? Like, this is not a perfect product. Nothing that we do is perfect. Nothing I do in my day-to-day life is ever perfect, right? I'm always looking to do better no matter what. And so I think having that mentality going into this, also not being afraid to fail. I'm pretty good at failure, but I'm also pretty good at learning from my failures. So, and hopefully I can then teach somebody how not to fail the way that I failed. So,
yeah.
Bradford?
You don't have to do everything. If it's just one title, stick with one title. Take it slow. And yeah, you're going to mess up. And I tell people that all the time. Yeah, you're going to mess up, but that's where you learn. And like Mike said, just go back and debrief. Debrief with your students too. They'll tell you the truth. They'll let you know what worked and what didn't work.
You don't have to do everything. Here's the soundbite. My final thought, I'm going to dovetail off again one of the comments that Fiona gave about parents can't have those, referring to health and wellness conversations. Parents can't necessarily always have those conversations successfully with their kids, which is true. But we as educators have a very special place with kids. We have a lot of influence over them. Sometimes their parents will say one thing, we can either back that up, or when we deliver it, the message carries differently. So it is important that, again, we are not shying away from these conversations. But here's the other thing too, as Mike kind of alluded to as well in his, we got to be vulnerable. We have to, we are not always going to be the content experts. We are not always going to be right 100% of the time. And when we aren't, let's set the example for our students by saying, I screwed up, or say, I made a huge mistake. Because ultimately, the classroom is still on a 0 to 100 scale for a lot of kids, right? If they fail, they get a 0. If they succeed, they get 100%. We are not 100% of the time. As educators, we are faulty. As much as we want to make ourselves look 100% right 100% of the time, we aren't. And we just have to admit when we aren't. We have to, again, model that for our kids, because right now, especially in the world that we're in, making one mistake can sometimes cost anybody a job or a marriage or a friendship or anything, just because of the state of the world that we are in. So we have to change that story. Again, be vulnerable, be brave to admit when you do make a mistake, and be able to, as Mike said, and as Chris put in the chat, debrief and say, how can we make this better? Because ultimately, this is what we're here for. We want to make the experience better for kids. And with that, this will end our Wednesday night Esports EDU chat. So for myself, James O'Hagan, Bradford Harris, and Mike Dolly, thank you for being a part of the conversation tonight, and we will be back again next week.